Hello, friends. I'm DJ Lance Rock, and I have to say, Rock and Roll Grad School is awesome!
This is Rock and Roll Grad School with your hosts, Heidi Hedquist and Luke Poling. Oh, they're so dull. Come on, rip them to shreds.
Hello, kiddies. We are going to have a good time together because we are talking with New Model Army.
New Model.
What did I say?
I thought you said Model Army.
I thought I said New Model Army.
You might have. All right, should we start again?
Okay. No, I think we should leave this all in.
Well, I'm sure Justin will be really pleased that we...
Okay. Hello, kiddies. We are going to have a real great time together because we are speaking with Justin from New Model Army. There we go. I got that in.
I know. Well done.
Thank you. It's a fascinating interview. They are one of those bands. How did we describe them? They were...
Well, they're super cool, first of all. And they've been around for 40 years. And I, at least, had known who they were back
for a while.
80s. Yeah, but then I kind of lost touch of who they were.
Right.
But several of my friends are super fans, and I just was really excited to like rediscover them or truly discover them. And they touch like a gazillion genres, uber talented, uber smart.
And I think we said even before we spoke with Justin, punk in the correct definition of that word, in the best sort of possible way of sticking the thumb in the eye of the man or whatever.
Yes, but they're known by their fans for being punk, folk, rock, metal.
Yeah, a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything.
And somehow the records still sound different.
Yes.
Every time out.
And some of their songs like touch 5 genres in one.
This is true, yeah.
And you don't know which way it's going to go. It's a really delightful journey. If you have not discovered a band or done a deep dive on a band in a while, I highly recommend it.
Yes.
And he's a really great conversation.
Yes. And now we want to wrap up and get over to the conversation soon, but now it's my duty to bring us all down.
As you do.
Thank you. And say Vaya con Dios, Ramalama, fa 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 to Brother Wayne Kramer.
Yes.
Which I guess I didn't know he was sick. I didn't know anything was going on. So I was sort of like stunned when I saw the news last week.
I know, it was a bummer.
But it was a great excuse to get out. Born in the USA, and no, is it Born in the USA? Made in the USA?
Well,
it was a great excuse to get out, kick out the jams, and High Time, and their first studio record produced by John Landau, whose name I can't remember right now.
Indeed.
Yeah, and it's great driving music, in case you were wondering.
It is great driving music.
And now I think only the bassist is the lone surviving member of the MC5.
Yeah, there's not many left.
They had some unfortunate passings early on through nobody's fault for a change.
Right.
True. And then you have to look at Wayne Kramer as a figure outside of the band and all the stuff he did.
Did some very cool stuff.
And the Jail Guitar Doors charity, named after the Clash song, which was written about him. Which, if someone ever, well, what makes Wayne Kramer cool? Well, he had a Clash song written about him. Your turn. What else you got?
Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. So, but right now, it's time to talk to Justin from New Model Army.
After all the days of waiting, we were suddenly released. rehearsed. We filled our pockets with good fortune.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Okay.
You doing the slog of promo today?
I've been doing a lot of slog of promo and rehearsing at the same time. So rehearse all day and then do promo all night.
Oh,
Oh.
yeah. So pretty much laid back, very easygoing day for you.
That's all right. Whatever.
Yeah.
Here's what it is.
Well, let's just jump in then. Congratulations on the record. It's really good. It's really, I don't know if fun's the right word to describe it, because there's a lot of important stuff going on there, but like it's a fun listen.
Well, you're the first person to say that. I quite like that.
Okay.
I think it's fun too. I think it's when we sort of finished it in the summer, and then we didn't listen to it for a while, obviously afterwards, and then I listened to it again, sort of around the turn of the year, and the thing that came across to me that it's just full of kind of defiance, and it's lots of brah, rah. It's kind of that sort of record. I think it had a weird, I mean, I've talked about this in all the other interviews, but it had a weird sort of birth in the sense that we sort of worked on it on and off over 2 years. And what you're hearing is basically demos. We decided early on that we wanted Chad to mix it. And we approached Chad and he said, send demos. We sent him 6 tracks. And he said, are these demos or are they works in progress? And we said, well, they're demos. We want to talk to you about where we should record it, what studio, who we should record it with. Would you be interested in producing? And he went, no, I like the demos. And we went, you want to mix the demos? And he went, yeah. And then I talked to him, and so basically that's what it is. And I talked to him later and we were discussing how, I mean, this is generally true of all bands. You make demos and then you make a record that sort of is a bit better, but you lose something in the process. And there's something about when you do demos is that you're thinking of an idea and you just throw it at the tape or the computer, and you're not thinking about it. You're not trying to play it right, but you are excited about it because it's new, and that's the way you play it. And then later on, I mean, I know this, when you get in a studio and you're trying to record stuff as a band, the red light goes on and everyone's trying not to make a mistake, or they're thinking about it, or they've learnt the parts, so they're playing what they've learned, which is different from just having an idea and chucking it down. And so what you're hearing on this record is just loads of ideas thrown at the tape.
That's so interesting, because I always wonder about that, because you always hear about bands, like you said, trying to kind of capture that sound of the demo and going, there's something here we like, how do we recreate this?
You can't recreate it, because when you play something the very, very first time, or sing something the very first time you sing it, there's a certain energy and naivety perhaps, or simplicity certainly, that you can't recreate. And a kind of chaos. Michael is a sort of absolute key member of the band. But he's got a very advanced sense of responsibility, and I think this is a drummer thing. When you put him in a studio, you're doing the take and the red light goes on and stuff. You can hear him playing everything right, which is not the same thing as when you put him in front of give him a click track on a computer, and he's got an idea on the drums. I've got this beat. I'll just chuck it down, and he plays kind of free. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of that on this record, I think. And we wanted to make something very simple and direct. The last album was quite complex, and we took a step out of the world. We went to this extraordinary studio in Norway in an island, and we took a step back out of the world and all the conflicts involved, and we made something quite beautiful and very big sounding, which went with the landscape of this big, beautiful, bleak. Having done that, we always wanted, whenever we'd done something, we wanted to do the opposite. And we thought about this album. We thought, let's just do something very simple. It perhaps helped that we became a 4-piece instead of a 5-piece. And also in the middle of it, we we did the Symphonia thing project where we played with an orchestra. So that's huge and expansive and beautiful. And again, the same thing as a reaction. It was, right, okay, now let's go back to being a punk band. You know, a bit like that. So we knew we wanted to make something kind of straightforward. I mean, it's got lots of other, you know, it's not as completely straightforward, but I think that, you know, New Model Army has sort of primarily always been about bass and drums, and that's really to the fore on this record. There's all sorts of other instruments in there. You know, there's kalimba. The first song's got, you know, that lovely sound in the middle of the song is a, you know, one of those thumb pianos, kalimba. And then on Reload, bam, 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 thought of the melody. Kerry plays that on a hammer dulcimer. So it's full of interesting instruments, which we always do anyway. But the basics of it are pretty simple.
So I have to like interrupt and just destroy our interview right out of the gate and go completely fangirl out of nowhere. So I've been on this journey all of a sudden with you. So I, as a little kid at the age of 8, Luke's been saying, I wonder how long it's going to be before you say, when I was 8 in 1984, I moved to London. So it's coming out at like this many minutes in. And I remember you being on Top of the Pops, and I thought it was so cool. And I wanted the t-shirt, perhaps for the, you know, I was 8, so it was probably because of Mr. T and Nancy Reagan. So maybe for the wrong reasons, but I did want the t-shirt. And I thought it was like, you guys were amazing. And I thought the song was so cool. And I wanted to be so punk. And again, I was 8. So I was immediately distracted by Morton Harkett from a-ha and kind of lost track of you guys, but kind of knew who you were on the periphery, and like kind of knew some of your music. And then some of my friends in later years knew who you were because they were mega fans, but kind of lost who you were. So ever since, and my friends, I kind of blame them for holding out on me. I've been on this journey now that we got to talk to you, where I've been on this deep dive, and only twice at this stage of my life have I been on a deep dive to discover a band like you this late and go on a deep dive. And I have lost my mind over your catalog and who you are, and am just, you've blown my mind. And I just want to talk to you for hours about every little aspect and every little thing. And I it's unreal. And I'm so sad that I missed all these years, but I'm so excited.
Oh, that's all right. There's plenty to catch up
Yes,
with.
I'm so excited to get to experience it now, because it's so fun at this age to get to do that now, because it was so fun to do it when I was younger. But now to get to do it, it's amazing. The only other band I've got to do it with later is Sparks. So 2 very different bands, but very similar.
There are similarities.
Yes,
actually.
that's what I
think
said.
I think this kind of very different musically, but this attitude that we don't really give a shit.
This is
We're only
exactly
just
what I just said.
We're just basically trying to please ourselves. That's all we're doing.
And that's why I love you both.
Somebody said to me, "What's the difference between now and 43 years ago?" And I thought about it. And when you first start in a band, basically you get in a room with a bunch of people and you make a noise that you kind of love making together. It's a together thing. And you make this noise and you're proud of it, and you've made it, and you create this noise, and you kind of going, yeah, this is ours. And 43 years later, it's basically exactly the same. You know, you just make a noise that you love.
But it's so good, and there's so much to it, and it's just so good. It's so good. And so I don't know, it's everything. It's everything. I love it. And it's so fun. Like fun in the, not just fun, like
it's
fun,
the first
but
time anyone's
like,
used this word, but I'm pleased about that, because
I know, but
we think it's fun too.
Well, and you're listening to someone, you know, obviously there's some political sides to some of the songs, and you're like, oh, these people were on the same page. And I think that you're expressing a lot of things that people feel and people think, but just to have that sort of agreeance and done in a way that's, you know, just sounds great. It's sort of like, all right, this is my team. We're all going to battle together on some of these things.
Well, that's it. Even when the subject matter isn't fun, like even if the subject matter isn't fun, like to feel that like spark of revolution is,
There is
I
a
guess,
kind of there is a
the
triple
energy.
joy in it for us.
Yes, exactly. It's like the energy is electric. So maybe it's electric, not fun.
Well, we also I can't remember who we were talking to, but this idea of the use of the word punk. And I think early on with you guys, and especially this new record, I texted Heidi and was like, these guys are punk in the correct, definite use of the word.
Right.
It's weird. I because I'm old, I remember all this very clearly. And it was the end of the 70s, this punk thing. What it was really, it cut across art and it cut across poetry and it cut across all sorts of things. And it was a kind of cultural revolution which reaffirmed the idea that the purpose of art is the communication of spirit. That's what it's about.
Exactly.
Yes. And yes, it was combined with a lot of kind of fuck you attitude. So we're going to make what we're going to make. And we don't care what anybody else thinks. And it included people I remember the late 70s, included people getting up in pubs, reading poetry while doing spoons on their hands, stuff like that. Anything creative, just for the joy of creation and the spirit of it. In the early 80s, it formed into a kind of a form of music where you have to play fuzzy guitars and shout a lot. But it wasn't that. It wasn't that at all. And so what happened in the early 80s is the bands that came out of it all went off in different directions. So, you know, Depeche Mode went there and The Cure went there and Killing Joke went there and we went there and the Sister Mercy went there. And everybody took the idea. There are no rules about how you have to make music. It's just creation. And everybody went off in different directions, but everybody with that kind of attitude of, we're not really trying to please anybody except ourselves. We're just trying to make something that we think is good. And a lot of those, you know, a lot of those bands still running because they've got that attitude. If you start off with the idea that music is a means to an ends, you know, money or fame or anything else, you're fucked basically.
Yeah.
Because if you achieve money and fame, that's absolutely a double-edged sword. If you don't achieve money and fame, you're terribly disappointed. But if you set off with the idea that you just want to make something you love, you've got nothing to lose.
Well, isn't that the key to everything? Like I was
going to say with the demos too. I mean, that idea of approaching it with, you know, these new songs going, we just want to be happy with these songs and, like, you know, play them to the best of our ability, do the best we can.
I say they're all first takes. Well, some of them are first takes. Some of them took 2 bloody years to write. You know, that we were just bouncing ideas around all the time. Oh, we can make that better. Or Language, which is a brilliant bass and drum groove. We wrote a different song with it. And we sat on that song for more than a year before we finally went, it's okay, but I think there's something better here. So we just threw the whole song away and started again with the bass and drums and wrote a different song. And that one got the kind of hook line about the language, love, bring your love and war and etc. But each verse was, you know, I've got all sorts of different ideas for verses. And actually, there are 3 verses in the song, but they're all completely different. They're musically from each other. They're not really like verses. They're just different sections of music. And then Idamir, Idamir started off as a James Brown riff, funnily enough. And then Michael,
as most things do, yeah.
Yeah, right. Michael put this kind of weird, very Michael Dean tribally tom beat across it. And then I think it was Kerry, we were saying, maybe something acoustic-y, like the Western, the theme from Deadwood, that sort of vibe. So Kerry picked up an acoustic guitar and did that. And then for a long time, I've been really into Sacred Harp thing. You know, I had Sacred Harp singing. And I thought, I'm going to experiment with it. So I found this track from a 2012 Irish Sacred Harp gathering. You know, it's an old hymn, etc., with this amazing harmonic structure and the way that Sacred Harp is sung, which is all about spirit and not about perfection. So it's got this amazing vibe, all the Sacred Harp recordings you'll ever hear. So I sort of cut it up and put it in the song. And we went, well, we should probably get a real choir and we should probably do it for real, maybe change the words. But bit by bit, we just fell in love with what we'd stolen. So in the end, we just wrote to the people in Ireland and said, can we use it? And they went, well, it's not in copyright. So I guess you can use it. We said, what about the recording? They said, well, don't think it is. Maybe you should send a donation to the Sacred Heart Foundation in Alabama. So we did that and used it.
Do you think some of it, and my reading might be wrong, but it seems like this record is maybe the fourth or fifth that you've done with this lineup of the group without changing? And do you think some of it is just that familiarity with each other and that kind of just knowing everyone's strong suits?
Other than the fact we lost a member along the way, so we were 4 rather than 5. But I think, yeah, me, Kerry, Michael, and Dean, we do know each other very well, and we had the whole experience in the middle of making the album of doing the much delayed by COVID 40th anniversary tour, which in a lot of cases meant playing. We'd play a city for 2 nights, and we play 60 different songs over 2 nights. And I think that made us very, very kind of together. How can we work this old song? And we know all the, you know, the 4 of us know all the catalogue roughly. So that, I think, made us very tight. I think on this album, Kerry's written a lot on this album, more perhaps than before. You know, he's growing more and more into the band. He's been in the band like 10, 12 years now, but becoming more and more to the fore. And yeah, I think we do trust each other in the sense that when we argue about the music all the time, of course, which is sort of normal, but we kind of trust each other. So if somebody plays something or I play something and somebody else say, no, I don't think it's very good, I think you can play it better, or I don't like the part, I don't take it personally. I know that it's for the benefit. So then I'll go, and if I really love it, I'll argue my corner. But generally speaking, I have an awful lot of ideas, but a lot of them are bad ideas. So I rely on the others to tell me which the good ones and the bad ones are. Michael's very good producer in that sense. I've always thought this about drummers because Robert, Michael's predecessor, was a brilliant producer as well, which is that when you're a drummer, you're basically balancing all these different sonics. You're playing in a way, lots of different instruments, and you're getting a balance between the different sonics of a drum kit. And so when they start listening to whole pieces of music, they see, you know, where the guitar fits, where the bass fits, how the sonics work together. I think it's a drummer thing. I'm not very good at that, and I'm very aware of my limitations, both as a musician and a producer. And we sort of rely on each other, really. You know, Dean's quite in the background sometimes, but every now and then Dean will walk forward and go, that shouldn't do that, that should do that. And because he doesn't say things very often, we sort of pay attention, and 9 times out of 10 he's right.
How, with that, having some, you know, you've had obviously various iterations of people come in and out of the band. How fast has that trust been built? Has it always just sort of been intuitive that you knew this was the right combination?
Different versions of the band at different times have been easier than others. This one's a very easy, we're very good together. But the thing about having different people come and go has been, for me, has been extremely beneficial. I recently read Bono's autobiography, which I found, I don't usually read, you know, people's autobiographies. They're usually all the same story. You know, it was exciting when we were young, and then money arrived and everything went wrong. But with U2, it was like Bono. You know, Bono's talking. He said by the end of the 80s, they'd kind of perfected this kind of quasi-religious stadium rock thing that they were masters of. And then he felt that they got kind of stuck and they needed to reinvent themselves. And every now and again, they'd try very self-consciously to reinvent themselves. how do we make ourselves different? How do we get away from this? And it was very deliberate. And if you look back across U2's career, some attempts were better than others. And really, they're just very good at being quasi-religious rock band. But with us, every 5 or 10 years, somebody new arrives. And when somebody new arrives, it isn't like the old band with the new bloke. It's like all the dynamics shift very slightly. So it's a bit like being in a new band. Plus, whoever arrives with a whole different set of musical background. So that informs the music slowly. It changes it, and it means that we never have to sort of sit down and think about how to reinvent ourselves. It just happens naturally because of people coming in. One of the things about New Model Army is that nobody that's ever been in the band likes the same music as anybody else. We all come from really different musical backgrounds with different loves. I remember it was a different version of the band, but years ago, trying to agree on one album in the history of music that we all unreservedly loved, and we couldn't agree on one. And I think that's unusual for a band, actually, that we all come from very different places. I'm a Motown guy. My first love is Motown stuff. Kerry's a metal guy. Dean's first love is 60s psychedelia. Everybody's coming from a different place.
And I'm assuming too, when somebody new comes in, it kind of reinvigorates the catalog, and that you're hearing new things in stuff you've been playing for a while because you're hearing what somebody else is appreciating and bringing to that track
slightly differently.
Yeah, it's got to be great, and kind of this constant, because I feel like always the stuff with New Model Army, it's like, oh, well, there's been some turnover, but to keep hearing what all these other people find in the song, what they can bring to that song, the things that they are able to pull out of it's got to be great, especially as a songwriter, to sort of have people read things, take things that perhaps you didn't know you were putting in there or didn't intend to put there, but it's all there, and it's all.
I mean, the way we construct songs, I mean, I've said this in every interview, so it's not that interesting, but it is true that we have two cupboards. I don't know if this is true of all bands, but this is how we work. We have two cupboards, and one is marked musical ideas, and into that goes a chord sequence, a bass line, a bit of a jam that we did together, a melody that somebody thinks when they're walking down the road and they're recording with their telephone, and drum beats, especially drum beats. Michael will always have loads of interesting beats, and we'll loop them, and they're sitting there. And then there's the other cupboard, which is all my notebooks of words. So this is stuff I want to write about. And in the notebooks is, a couple of lines that I thought would be interesting, a story somebody tells me, a rant about something, just lots of different lyrical ideas. And then we go, okay, now let's make an album. And you have to wait till the cupboards are full, but actually they're always full. So you go, right, okay, let's make an album. We'll start with drums. We usually do start with drums, actually, not always. Sometimes drums and bass, sometimes some chords. But okay, we'll start with that drum beat. And maybe these chords, what does that feel like? Well, that feels a bit like this lyrical idea. So you put something together, and then it's always rubbish, the first thing you write. So you throw it away, and you're really not worried because there's all these other great ideas knocking around. And it's a bit like doing a jigsaw puzzle. And we're all kind of involved. The structure of a song and the way the words fall, that's my job. But the arranging of the song, everybody's contributing. And everybody plays. So with the exception of Michael Dean, everybody that's ever been in New Model Army has played guitar on a record. Robert, our drummer for many years, was a brilliant guitar player. And actually Kerry's played a lot of guitar on this record. So everybody plays guitar. Whoever thinks of the part or plays it the best, they play it on the record, whatever. We're not sort of precious about it,
I was going to say, it sounds like somehow there's not a lot of ego involved in making this music, that it's just like what serves the song best, who can do that in a way with an immediacy that fits what we're trying to do. And
completely that.
That there's no, I'm the guitarist, I'm the bassist, I have to play every track line on this record.
That's kind of right. That's how we are.
How do you find people like this of similar mindset? Because it seems like all the bands break up because somebody wants to do one thing one way and somebody doesn't. And I mean, it seems like you guys, you've soldiered on.
I don't know. We've just got a way of doing things, and when somebody new arrives, we feel if they're the right person. Mostly, they usually are. Occasionally, we make a mistake, but mostly. Somebody said to me a while ago, actually, they said, "I know what your talent is, Justin," and I said, "Oh, please do tell me." And they said, "You're really good at getting good people around you," and that is a talent of a kind, yeah.
Mark of a good leader.
But I also accept that there are large holes in my musical ability, my musical sensibility, my me. There's lots of things I'm not very good at, and I absolutely rely on other people.
And maybe that's part of it too, is just that ability to acknowledge your own shortcomings or the things you're
there
less
is a
secure
sort of
about.
misnomer that because I'm the only original member, it must be me and some musicians, in a kind of nebulous way. It's really not. I mean, I was the only original member by 1985. So that's not sort of particular,
right?
And we do operate very much like a band. I'm rubbish at making decisions. Kerry can't make decisions either. Michael's good at making decisions. Somebody has to.
Right. It only takes one. As long as somebody does it.
It's so fascinating to see that dynamic between groups, because you always hear of, obviously it's not the easiest thing to have a lifelong friendship or partnership with one person, let alone 4 or 5.
Very different people, and outside the band we don't hang out together really. We have very different personal lives, and we don't hang out together. Do
you think that's part of the secret to it? Is that,
I don't know, our different groups are different, it works different for different people. But we are very different characters. I think that's true of all groups actually, and there is something about musicians which isn't true. Obviously, I lived for many years with Jules, who's been our artist for many years, and she's a writer and a poet and an artist. So I've hung around in my life with quite a lot of writers and poets and artists. They're quite difficult people because what they do, essentially, they do alone. Whereas musicians are more like theatre people. We need each other. Yeah. Therefore, we're generally more tolerant of all musicians and actors. We're all fucked in the head a bit, all a little bit autistic. We're all a little bit sort of selfish and in our own little worlds and stuff. But we need each other. Therefore, we tolerate, our level of tolerance for each other's weirdnesses is quite high, I think. I think that's generally true of musicians.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's what fuels it, right? Got to have that to fuel
it. We do need each other, and therefore you tolerate the things that come with that person. If you want to work with that person, you have to deal with the stuff that comes with that person. You just have to accept it. It's just how it is.
That's what sparks the creativity for the rest of us too, is the weirdness of each other.
Maybe.
I did nothing wrong, I did nothing wrong. I was always straight and honest, as the days were always long. I love the job, I love to help the people.
Unbroken, the new album by New Model Army, is available right now wherever you get your music. For more information, you can find the group online at newmodelarmy.org, or you can follow them on Facebook, where they're at facebook.com/newmodelarmyofficial.
You can check us out on all the various socials.
Be sure to visit our website at rockandrollgradschool.com, and don't forget to leave us a review.
Today's show is produced by myself and Heidi Hedquist. Our reluctant producers are John Sauvé and Sandy Stone. Our willing producers are Rachel Allen and Randy Jeanette. Our intern is Zach Jackson. This one's for Philippe. Thank you, good night, and may all your favorite bands stay together.
I stare at numbers and stare at the walls closing in. Machines do not lie, machines cannot lie. The company men are I, business suits and poker faces. I offered what I could, but I am under suspicion. Must be somebody knows what's going on. Somebody isn't saying the strategies of money multiply with